All right, so let's get started with the history. So, this lovely gentleman here, the book From Ibadan to Heliard, written by Stuart Fortuné, highlights the journey and evolution of the steel pan. So, Stuart, given the importance of cultural preservation, how can we ensure that these historical narratives that you've documented, and particularly access to resources like this documentary type book, are effectively utilized to educate and inspire future generations of steel pan practitioners?
Well, your time, right? Well, first of all, thank you, Lee, for putting this together. Ian and I love what you were saying before. Before I answer your question, I just want to talk about something that Ian said and the question that Akinola asked in terms of where it all originated. Doing the research for my book, it kind of originated in the Oyo Empire with the Yoruba people, and that is where most of the slaves came across from. So just to touch on that briefly before you go into what you were saying. So it is one experience the Caribbean had together, as you said. It's just localized. So what is available, resources in one island might be different than another island. Some things may have been banned and lost in memory, as you said. So I love the discussion. I was sitting down there and I was just like, but yeah, so sorry about the question. How do we preserve it? So I guess I did my own journey, I did my research, and I tried to create a story that will preserve the authentic story from emancipation to independence. Because after emancipation, both parties, the former slave master, supposed to have the same rights to express their cultures, their selves on the road. Every carnival is on the road, we're on the road. That's a theme, it's a real theme. We don't go back and understand what it represents, but just the ability to express your culture openly on the road is a serious thing. That was prevented to one huge portion of society. Because again, the question will be, after emancipation, will the island be Afrocentric? Will it be Eurocentric? So we try to create and mold that how they want it to be, which was to our disadvantage. But when you do research and you put together the whole story, now we're able to share the journey that we all came through. Sorry. Yes, we're able to share the journey with younger generations who never saw the story before, inspire them. The older generations, they read the book and they get some nostalgia, like, yes, this, I remember this, yes. When they're the town coming on Frederick Street and military formation, like, yeah, I remember that, Lord Blakey, yeah. So it's about documenting our own stories and being able to make it in a palatable form to be easily digested by your audience. Like, for instance, my book is not 1 million pages. Nobody in 2025 reading a thick book with footnotes and so. So it had to be a short, concise, easily palatable story for our story to be able to be shared easily, So that's generally it. I did the research and put together the story to make sure that if you don't know your past, you don't know your future. You know you're lost. You're hoping somebody could give you guidance as to what your next step should be. As opposed to what your last step was, your next step should be here. As it is now, we're asking people, what do you think we should do? And they're not going to give us the best advice. They're going to keep us in a position how they traditionally kept us. So in a nutshell, I said a lot so far, but it's about documenting the history and making sure the younger generations specifically able to understand it, understand how important it is. History doesn't start when you're born. Your grandparents went through a certain phase, their great-grandparents went through a certain phase. It's not about being in a museum or a fossil. It's when you look at Carnival just passed. When you look around, you're seeing life history, things that's been going on for 200 years. You experience it, you live in it. So I will wind on there. But yeah, that's how I view it, Gather the stories ourselves so that we could. I learned something from what everyone said this morning. So, I have a deeper arsenal. And hopefully people could learn something from me as well and be able to share their stories.
So I have a random question not related to Steelpan at all. I generally like to hear the explanation behind the coming up of names. How did you come up with the name of the book, Ibadan to Helyar?
Well, from Ibadan, that's where the Oyo
Ibadan, sorry.
Empire and the Yoruba people would have come from. And then Helyar is Trinidad all stars. So
Right.
it's the whole history of, as mentioned to Akinola earlier, Steelpan is, we like to say, is a symbol of resistance and so, but it's also a symbol of success and victory. You know, so we, through Helyard, I mean, everyone have the favorite band, but you have to pay respect to where the first rudimentary versions came about. You know, obviously they had Tamu Bamboo before and all these different things. But the first time a note was sung and saved in a piece of metal, a one note, was in Helyard by Hamill Thomas. A half Chinese, half black. People didn't know that. They think everything is Afro. You know, the first person was half, his father was a Chinaman, working on docks, and his mother was African. And then some of the earlier players too was half Venezuelan, half black. So the name of the book was really to signify again that journey from Ibadan through the Steelpan movement, specifically Helyard's experience, as how that was really to get us independence over time.
I love that you equated it to success and resilience, because that is a story, and victory, because that is a story not often associated with Steelpan, even though we know it is. It's always the narrative that is always spoken is always about the struggle. We had to go through so much pain, and with this, emancipate yourself from mental slavery.
There's that side as well. Yes.
So I love that you're focused on the resilience and the positive aspect of it. We've already gone through the struggle. What does the future hold?
Still going through the struggle.
Yeah, but not like before. Evolution.
Steelpan is victory. That is how
it is victory.
Again, it's from garbage that we were to transform this into, I guess, we'll talk about the family of instruments, but we will to convert what they would consider garbage, just like how certain people would have considered a certain class garbage, and now that it's competitive worldwide.
Right.
You know, so.
And for the audience members, where is your book available?
Well, it's available at the Central Bank Museum downstairs, well, across there. Also available at Midco. And then all across the country, Paperbase, RIK, Charon's, Metropolitan Bookstore, well, Amazon, the ebook, it's available. It's available.
All right. So basically just do a Google search and find the closest place near to you and purchase the book, right? Yes? Lovely. All right, so let's move on to talk about social and business aspects, right? So the Steelpan has the potential to be a dominant revenue earner year-round and plays a significant role in lateral social responsibility and prosperity. So Akinola, let's start with you in unpacking this lovely statement.
All right, good morning, everyone. Appreciation to Lee and the team for having me be part of the panel discussion this morning. Yeah, definitely the Steelpan has a very high, I would say, social currency. And as the instrument itself did, you know, where it, I would say it went through this upcycling process from taking some that was discarded, something that was, you know, of little use, you know, and carrying it up the value chain and making it into something of use, and actually, to say it quite frank, making it one of the Earth's most phenomenal instruments ever. The instrument itself, I've seen it over time and time, done that with human beings. You know, taking men that were, I would say, marginalized and were of a certain social class, so to speak. You know, and through their engagement with the Steelpan and the Steelpan institutions, that is the Panyard, we have seen these men grow into leaders, You know, I think the Panyard is that space that produces a type of leadership that is so diverse, and the diversity doesn't end with arts and culture only. The leadership that comes out of the Panyard dwells into economics, politics, health. I mean, you name it. So the Steelpan as a social vehicle, as a social entrepreneurship project in itself, you know, is something great. I think the Panyard in itself could be deemed as a socioeconomic, sociocultural response to this anti-colonialism mantra. You know, it stands as a response to that. And I think we have really captured the sociocultural aspect of it. You know, as a fraternity, we have really captured that, and we have seen it work, you know, throughout the passage of time. I think, though, the aspect that is in definite need of work in terms of structurally is the socio-economic part. Now, the economics is present. Yeah, we see where coming out of the Steelpan fraternity, coming out of, if you want to zero into Carnival and Panorama, is definitely a thriving industry. But is my observation, though, that the least beneficiary group of this economics derived from the Steelpan is the actual panman. And that in itself smells like something to me. You know, it smells a little funny. You know? Because you have this man, and without him, there isn't a panorama, there isn't an industry, there isn't any of that, but he seems to benefit the least. And as a steel band leader, I would know. Just yesterday, me and Aku was having a discussion with some youths, and probably after a steel band wins Panorama, and they decide to divide $1 million amongst the players, they wouldn't get past probably $7,000 per player.
For a whole season.
For a whole season that lasts 3 months. Right? We have a lot of work to do structurally where that is concerned. And I think some of the structural work, you know, it is not directly in Panorama alone, but is in a lot of the different support systems and a lot of different things. You know,
So yes, continue here a little bit on the topic of competition. Do you think that is the best way that Trinidad and Tobago should be continuing to push the Steelpan in that competition-only driven environment?
I mean, me personally, I don't see anything wrong with the competition. I think the competition somewhat give people this drive for excellence. You know, because Panorama in itself was this innovation stage. I mean, a lot of innovations that happened within the Steelpan industry, it didn't happen in, Panorama was this innovation convention, so to speak. They would have invented a new pan to display it at Panorama. They invented a new type of stand, a new type of way of acoustics, or approaching the acoustics to display it at Panorama. So Panorama was always this display stage for Steelpan evolution and for Steelpan innovation. So something about that drove the Panman, you know, to continue his, I would say, re-emerging his excellence, you know? So nothing is wrong with in my opinion, with competition in itself, but the structure of it, really needs to be addressed urgently.
Gentlemen, do you all have anything to add to that question? Or his answer?
Yeah. So I agree with Akinola in terms of nothing wrong with the competition, but I think we must bring a sense of balance. And I believe I have a saying, less competition, more creation. I think it's the very first Mark said that let's do things to create opportunities, to create and collaborate rather than just have to be competing. So Panorama has a space. It's definitely have a space. It drove the instrument to where it is in terms of development, sound-wise, aesthetics, player development. But I believe at this stage, we need to balance that off with something which showcases all these other things that we develop, not just locally, but also internationally.
No, I agree fully.
You're good.
With everything said.
All right. So this is for anybody or all to answer. What concrete, actionable strategies can be implemented to transform the steel pan industry into a sustainable, profitable business, while simultaneously ensuring that the practitioners who you mentioned are the essentials focus on their growth and are adequately supported and compensated?
I could take the first job at that. There was this philosophy that came to mind in 2018, and I call it the ecosystem around pan. And when we say practitioners, we're not just talking about players, but they're also manufacturers and other aspects of the industry. But the 8 pillars of the ecosystem represented manufacturing. Not just manufacturing from the perspective of having a pan, but manufacturing in a space where anybody could come and have a certain level of respect for the artisans that develop this instrument. Pillar number 2 was having a conservatory/institute. Now as we sit right here in the world, if we don't start developing manufacturers, tuners and builders, the industry is on life support. Because we have a handful of guys who's literally sustaining an industry that has grown way beyond their capabilities of sustaining that in terms of maintaining these instruments, far less even developing more. So we need to start making, on the manufacturing side, some type of interest for the youths to see that as a viable career path. Pillar 3, we need to understand performance. Just like you say, Panorama, what is the marketing behind this? Because we're talking about making economical growth. How can we encourage persons to see Steelpan both to impact education, to impact social development, to impact leaders, and package that in a way where the world can start adapting that to their cultures. So the idea is for those 3 pillars, have the manufacture, have the ensemble or the orchestra perform to a new market, maybe in front of some teachers, and entice them to see Steelpan as part of their systems. Point back to the manufacturing, develop more ensembles. Okay, they don't know what to do with it, send out our teachers and our manufacturers to be able to establish those spaces. Same way of Brazil exporting football, and I hear Grenada exporting jab. We could export our ecosystem around pan. Pillar 4, we need to understand where we come from. And I mean, Stuart is saying here about Helyard, but how was pan? Can we see a ping pong pan? Can we feel a ping pong pan? Or what I will say, ground dig, convex, concave. How was the pan before it actually reached to this state of development? 5, we really need to understand who was responsible for that evolution. So we must have a Hall of Fame where we can celebrate our heroes. I mean, we as young panists, it didn't start with us. It had persons before us. But if I didn't hear that story from somebody in the pan yard, where else could I have gotten that information? And I know there are generations after me who really don't know about some of these icons that we call them. Yesterday, I had a panage story, and a young lady who plays a lot of for a lot of bands in Panorama didn't even know it had a panage, and that's a very young story in itself. 6, money, research, development, scholarships, funds, grants. We really need to have access for the youths and also for the bands. Some people have a lot of ideas, but they don't have the financial support to take these ideas to market. 7, we need a festival. So we know about competition, we know about panorama, but we need a place where showcasing wins, where we could get to see what the Europeans are doing with it, what the Japanese are doing with it, what the Americans are doing with it, what we are doing with it, and to maintain us as leaders in that sphere of that convention/festival. And the last thing was a performance piece. Mecca, and I could use now in the month of Ramadan, my colleague here, everyone travels to Mecca. Trinidad should become the Mecca in a real sense. When you travel to Trinidad, not just for the competition, but there's this place that you get to be there and you had the rite of passage to become a panist. And I think those institutions really will help us propel the instrument forward, because it can't just be a way of having a little competition or a conversation. People have to be able to earn some type of living by this.
Yes, as Akua was listing out these pillars, I was hoping that he didn't mention the pillar that I was about to mention, which is, but he did, which was the last one. I think very, very important is to Trinidad maintaining that status of Mecca, in a definite and strong manner. I remember being at Amsterdam Conservatory some time back, and guys doing the PhD in jazz studies, they play very well. And they would tell you they don't feel accomplished unless they go to a jam session, in downtown New York, where a guy just come out of a taxi at 2 o'clock in the morning with a horn and a cigarette about to burn his lip. And when you get onto the bandstand, you want to make a decision if you want to continue playing music or not. After you hear him play now. So they say that they don't feel a sense of accomplishment until they go to a place like that, in New York and get the nod. And the same thing with any Latin players all over the world. They don't feel a sense of accomplishment until you get that rites of passage in Cuba. From our elders sitting on a corner casually a day. And I think we need to maintain that, that type of Mecca status, as I called it. Another one that, within that as well, is to really utilize more these universities of Steelpan that exist in the country. And the universities of Steelpan that are talking about is the Panyards. Really, ensuring, and is one of the ways to ensure that the economics of Pan in itself, is spread more equally. But not just utilizing it only, but also ensuring that they can be called that. That all Panyards are functional and play the role that they have been playing. But I would say play it in a more organized fashion, where the boxes of heritage preservation and reservation is ticked off, where music education is ticked off, where all the social aspects is ticked off, where Steelpan manufacturing is ticked off, and and this whole diversity happens within the Panyard.
Well, I'll just keep it short. I will look at it from two angles. One, we need to empower entrepreneurs like Akua and other entrepreneurs who have ideas along the Steelpan. It shouldn't be, getting capital is very difficult. Akua is a whole factory. That is not a $1,000 project, right? So you have to empower the entrepreneurs, partner mentors with them, try to see how we could finance these projects and so. So that is on one side, but the other side we need to look at is the risk. Like for instance, Mark was saying the globalization earlier. But right now we're in a tense global trade war environment. If it is, for instance, we were to outsource our production as the Carnival has done with the bikini mask, and then they say any government doing business with China will be tariffed. How does that impact the future of our culture? Is it that we outsourced our soul to other countries, or do we maintain the soul in Trinidad where we have control? Not necessarily Trinidad, because we could get it done in, say, if it is a problem, we could get it in, say, Dominican Republic or other places that have similar events, Cuba, we could get some manufacturing done there. But we need to look at the environment we're in and the risks involved, because costumes, people complaining, 8,000 for a costume. It's not going to be 8,000 if certain things happen. It will be 12,000, So we need to look at both sides and see how we can maintain the soul of our culture in our island, or at least have ownership and control over it.
I'm very glad that you touched on that point, because that trade war that is happening right now, we really need to pay attention to it, because it is going to affect our culture and how we're able to produce in the months, weeks, years to come. So that is something to pay attention to. And to add to the 2 cents of the Mecca conversation, I think it also comes down to us as a people owning what we have, recognizing that it is powerful on an international stage. And to draw just a very simple example of that, I remember during university days where we had to go and do some research for Steelpan development and so forth. And in checking a number of websites then that was selling Steelpan across the world, there are pans that they create in their country, and then there are the pans that they import from Trinidad and Tobago and place on their websites for sale. And that had the most value. And they will, I can't remember what term they were using it as, but basically, let's say they were using it as the premium steel pans. That's how they were selling it to the rest of the world that was buying from them. And it was, of course, at a premium price, So even in that, for us to understand our worth, because they do, but we have a tendency to not do that ourselves and to woe ourselves down. So yeah.
You mean they were selling imitation pants and real pants? Let's ask him. Because we have these geographical indicators that authentic steel pan must come from Trinidad. I'll just ask him.
Well, no, not then. Not then.
A question.
So good point. Okay, so let's move on to another category, export, seeing that I already kind of started that conversation of export. So as the only family of instruments created in the 20th century, now notice I said family of instruments. We like to say in a bubble that Steelpan is the only instrument that created in the 20th century. No, it was not. Other instruments were created, but it is the only family of instruments that were created, right? The Steelpan holds a unique position in the global musical landscape and our pride as a people. So how can we, or have we leveraged this distinction to expand the Steelpan's international presence and export its culture and economic value on a larger scale? And what role should digital platforms play in this expansion? And Akua, I'm throwing this question to you.
Yeah, so on the export market, well, let me just give a quick story. When we were forming Mitco, we did an international research. And one of the questions, which was strategically placed, was, do you care if a steel pan came from Trinidad? And the answer was, what do you think? The answer was no. So that changed our entire marketing strategy, because we tend to think, notwithstanding what Ms. Jimenez said just now, we tend to think because we were the birthplace is that the world still considers that. But one of the things that stood out is that they preferred good customer service, a reachable company, some place that they could come and change their instruments out if there's any issues, some type of customer service section. And the fact that it was made in Trinidad was not given that amount of weight. And we also realized over the years, I mean, we are now 3 years old. There were a lot of issues from some of the artisans, and I would say it's genuine issues, right? But from a customer perspective, it would be deemed elsewhere, where the artisan wasn't able to get the instrument to the customer. So instead of communicating that to the customer, they will either stop answering their phones or go AWOL for a little bit or change their numbers. And again, what you are leaving, a bad stigma, not based on the supplier's name, but on Trinidad and Tobago's name. We had another situation where we were looking for a drum supplier, because at the time we didn't have quality drums, and that's a whole conversation by itself. So we reached out to an international drum supplier, and we introduced ourselves as Midco from Trinidad and Tobago, and they hung up the phone. I said, what's going on here, you know? So we called back again. Hey, can we have a conversation here? Where are you all from, Trinidad? Hang up the phone again. So at this point in time, well, there's some questions to be answered. Called back again, and this was actually John Haddad from Hadco. And he said, hey, we are a valuable business in Trinidad. We just want to find out what happened. And they said they had a bad experience in Trinidad where someone didn't pay for that shipment of drums that they would have sent. So there's a lot of healing to happen before we as Trimbagonians get back to that point where the export market trusts that they will be able to place an order via online or via phone call or whatever systems you have in place and receive that order in good repute. So yes, on the export side, there's a lot of potential, but we also need some other type of resources to help foster our artisans to get those products to the customer. Nevertheless, I must say at Midco, we do have a wrap of having 80% of our instruments exported. We got breakthrough exported the year 2024. So we are ticking some boxes there with a quality instrument and also the proper business acumen to support those type of international sales. And even so, we as a people, as a government, as a society, I think some of our people need to be skilled in some of these things as well. So that type of support system needs to be engendered around our artisans. But there's a lot of opportunity out there. With the new, I will say, energies behind some policies, World Steelpan Day, August 11th. So August 11th, instead of coming to Spice Mass, I think we could have a nice steel band jam. It's now Grenada, sorry. Yeah, so August 11th was Steelpan Day. We now have the proclamation that the Steelpan is now our national musical instrument. We also gained the GI, the geographical indication. We said, as Stuart was indicating, an authentic Steelpan could come from Trinidad and Tobago. So all the saying behind those things, the proper policies and systems has to be in space to be able to deliver on that.
Anyone else wants to add to that?
I think with the global expansion of Steelpan culture, we definitely have a lot of work to do in the exporting side of things, where I would say bringing up the standard, some of the necessary facets of that entire exporting industry, starting with manufacturers. Because I know, even right in Trinidad here, like today, I would say you want 70 tenants to buy today, now, if you have the funds already, it's almost impossible. And I think we heading into a kind of expansive market with the culture expanding as it is, where such demands will start happening shortly, where orders of a certain magnitude will start taking place. So that in itself has a education side to it, where more youths need to be start channeling the possibilities of becoming instrument makers and tuners, where the education system in itself, must be pro that. And where more, I would say, government investment, into programs that, fosters more and more, manufacturers, because we could count on, probably two runs of our both hands, the amount of manufacturers that have in Trinidad presently. So on the export side of things, we definitely will have to, increase the number of our potential to actually manufacture the instrument.
It's very exciting. Eh? I think the fact that we don't, the fact that the demand is growing, it gives us that opportunity now to close in on that window. As institutions, as Akinola saying, the Deltones Institute, that alone, the amount of persons enthusiastic about Steelpan manufacturing, how can we now give them that skill set in a way where it contributes to a quality instrument is where the conversation has to go. And apprentice learning is, to me, is one of the best ways where you work alongside the professional rather than building up an institution. We don't have enough persons to teach in an institution, but we could get these persons alongside that professional in the field doing their daily craftsmanship to get that instrument out is to me where the focus has to go.
I just want to add, with the Steelpan being national instruments, I don't like to put too much responsibility on government. I like to see that we have the power ourselves to get things done. But just with that happening, the Minister of Culture, I believe every 2 years, he has to report to Parliament in terms of what new doors he opened, what new opportunities he created. So there's that side as well in terms of what the government will be what their responsibility and accountability in terms of the marketing of the brand and the brand Trinidad brand Steelpan will be. But we also need to narrow in on certain markets we want to attack. Not the whole world. In any business, everyone won't be a customer. You just need to streamline. Okay, this is the best opportunity for our exports, and see how we could break those doors down. But as everyone has said, it's a trajectory, and I just see growth. So, for instance, it started from 0 right now. So I just see percentage growth every year on year moving forward. Once things continue going, I'll anticipate them to go.
Just to give an idea of the markets. Europe, this is happening now. So, you could try to narrow it down, but the demand is so wide. You have Spain buying pans, Germany buying pans. We have orders from the full Caribbean. We have United States. We have Australia. So when you look at the globe, when we put our little markers up, almost on every continent, there's pan interest. So it's extremely exciting. But again, as Akinola said today, if someone walks up to me and say, okay, Mr. Leaf, we're ready to have 70 tenors, I will not be able to supply based on that same issue that you're talking about. But we really need to see it as an opportunity and act on it now.
Nice. And considering our future, right? The Steelpan significant role, the need for more practitioners, the need to boost our educational system around the Steelpan, the exports that we talk about. I'd like each of you to give me one takeaway of what you want to see for the future, and then we'll go to the audience for questions.
Well, firstly, to me, Steelpan stands as a means for economic freedom for our people. When I think of the Steelpan, I see it as nothing other than that. And it's in terms of why would I like to see it in a future context? I would like to see it become a means of prosperity for the youth of the Steelpan community. It's a phrase our president have been championing, which he says pan is prosperity. You know, it's a prosperity, it's pan. It's a phrase I actually like a lot. You know, and but I would actually like it to become, you know, a reality on the ground for the youth, for that tenor pan player that plays with a band in, I don't know, Shogun or somewhere. That he has foregone all the other isms that surrounds him in enterprise, and he had entered into the panyard wholeheartedly, holistically, and he went into the university and he played and he developed himself, and he has become a prolific player. I would like to see the pan become a means of prosperity for him, where he can socially, you know, gather the same a lifestyle as any other professional.
Okay, well, I'll touch on Patriotism Month. So we're talking about Pan, but we're focusing on Carnival and Panorama. But what I want to see more of in the future is more things like that, where we have a whole month for Pan. And it's not just the traditional Kaiso. We have the Calypso you play as well, but it's a classical piece, like that European, you know, classical Mozart, Beethoven type piece. And I guess Ako and I were speaking about this on a podcast I do. And the conversation was really about more collaboration and seeing what they're doing with the pan, what we're doing with the pan, you know. So that's something I want to see more of in the future. That merging, not selling ourselves, but merging with the global entities and seeing what they're doing, what they could do with it, you know, and what we could still take on and what we could, how we could improve it additionally. Because again, is people think the steel pan is what we see now, but it always had incremental improvements. Sticks had no rubber, then somebody put rubber on the sticks, and everybody was like, wow, that's something real good. I go and put rubber on the sticks next and I go and kill them. So it's always, you know, borrowing from this one, borrowing from that one. So that's what I want to see, more of that merging of the cultures, and more, not just 1 month of Steelpan, but more months and more activities and more celebration where the people, the players, the ecology of it, the whole landscape will be able to thrive, not just for 1 month for the year.
Yeah, I mean, not taking away from Stuart, but I just had 5 months of Panorama. So you are seeing that type of energy from Panorama into 21st century, into festivals and all these different things happening. But you really had to be in it to really get that experience. What comes to mind for me is Pan was by the people, for the people. And Akinola was given an example of what he want to see unfold. And literally, I came out of the bellies of the panyard. And if anyone who know my story will definitely understand the opportunities it could get and the possibilities that Pan could bring to our society. And for persons like Akinola and myself, and well, Stuart now as a writer, to see us as examples, to really push and take the mantra and have a mindset of excellence, a mindset of prosperity, a mindset of abundance, and let's challenge the status quo that is commonly known. And who think Pan is noise? Or you be honest. Yes, at some point in time, I too, to be honest, unless you really take one step further than that barrier and go into that space or pick up a pair of sticks and really interact with that instrument, or those persons that take on that instrument, you will then have a different appreciation. So Pan is by the people, which is us, for the people, which is us.
Love that. Love that. So on that note, you know, this is much belated, but I would like to say congratulations, you know, to Nicholas Huggins and Bugsy for their start of the work on the whole Google Steelpan thing. Definitely congratulations to the Ministry of Tourism and culture for pioneering the GI indicators, which they spoke about earlier, as well as the national status of the instrument. And definitely congratulations to you three for the different fields of work that you're working in Steelpan and helping us to develop, helping us to grow, and put us on that international stage, right? And of course to this conference for also amplifying that international stage. So, I'm glad that everybody is working so hard and things are propelling as it should be, long overdue. So now we open up the floor for questions, and be reminded that you need to go to the microphones in the lanes. You must go to the microphones in the lanes because we're recording, so they would want to get the responses. I don't see anybody lining up yet, but just go ahead and line up by the mic and...
First, I'd like to say my name is Cecil George, and I'm from Northern Alberta, Western Canada. And I was here in the panel speaking about the problem with pan, and I had a lot, because I started pan 42 years ago, or 43 years ago, in Alberta, Northern Alberta, way north, where I started with Native Indians, trying to get them to play the pan. And today, my daughter controls the band in Alberta. The problem I had in Alberta was players, tuners. You're bringing them up there and to give you a real headache, lot of headache. But you have no choice because you have nowhere else to go. Because if you know where I was, sometime when we go to play the pan, we have to take the pan, we have to play at night, and it's so cold that you have to take the pan there at 12 o'clock, take it in the room for it to get room temperature before you can play it. Otherwise, it's no good. It's so cold, you can't hold the pan with your bare hands. You have to put on gloves to take it in with you. And we don't know how much people love the pan. We don't know. We haven't got the slightest clue. You don't know. Pan, I don't think people in Trinidad like pan. I don't think so. Out there, they love the pan. Really, really love it. We play pan morning, noon. No, my daughter, that's what she do for a living. Pan. And we not. If I tell you how cold it gets there, you wouldn't believe it gets 60 below zero, 65 below zero. And we go and play pan. So we should appreciate it here. We should love it. But we don't. We don't. I'm here now. My daughter is here also. First time she come in here, we'll take a panorama. She's crazy over it, because first time she here in such a rate. But I hope we can put some more thought in it and get to like it a little more, My buddy here, I met him about 25 years ago. I came down for Panorama. 25, maybe 30 years, I don't know, very long. And I saw him and I went to him, and from that day to now, we're real buddies, and he tell me, because I told him, when I saw him, I told him, I said, see you? Keep what you're doing. You have a long way to go. And today he just tell me I remember he telling me, what did you see in me? And today I'm very proud of him. Very, very proud of him from when I first saw him. And what drew me to him is the go he had in him. And now today he is the pan man of Trinidad and Tobago. I know he can't. What's his name? Akinola. I don't know if you remember me, but I know I met you in Superi. I was at the Panyard, and I don't know if you remember me.
Not really.
Okay.
Not really.
I'm going to draw your mind. I'm going to draw it.
Thank
I'm going to
you.
enjoy it, but you remember, I told you I invented a new pan stick,
Okay, yes.
and I
yes.
come and introduce it to you.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you mean.
We want to thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
that contribution. Yes.
Yeah.
And don't lose the faith, because I think the country is making pan sexy again with all of the different thrusts behind it for the past few years. I think we're going to get back to that place where the country absolutely loves and fawns over Steelpan again. So don't lose the faith. And welcome to your daughter. And so you had a question?
So, thank you for your contribution once again, all the way from Alberta, but please reminded that we want to keep the contributions limited because we have so much to do and so little time. Thank you.
I just wanted to add a couple of points to what our illustrious friends up there spoke about. First of all, sure, pan is biased for us, but let's also pay attention to the fact that every year we turn out thousands and thousands of skillful pan men and pan women. Quite a few of them find themselves abroad playing for steel bands, in fact, propping up steel band industries in different countries. But it happens by chance. It's not a deliberate act on behalf of the government or the pan movement to export deliberately this incredible skill bank of talent that we have coming out every year from Panorama. The fact is that most of them go and they remain there illegally in some of these countries at the risk of being deported. But I think we have to pay attention to the fact that we have to do something about the number of people who come out of the industry that could be employed. We have a huge skill bank in the oil and gas industry, which we export around the world. You can find trainees in almost every major oil and gas industry around the world because we have an excellent skill bank in that field. And it's no different. And when we're talking about to diversify the economy, here's an opportunity to help by making a deliberate effort to export pan properly, legally, with the help of the government. Let me also say that when we export pan, when we opened the embassy in China in 2014, I was the first ambassador appointed to China. I made a deliberate effort. I had Panland bring me a tenor pan. And what I did for this grand opening ceremony that was viewed across millions of people in China was to play the pan myself with two Chinese dragon dancers as the coming together of two cultures, of two countries, pan from Trinidad and Tobago and the dragon dance from China. The point I want to make through this is that it sends the right message. Exporting pan is one thing, but exporting pan in isolation has a problem. I played a tenor pan that in fact, I think I'm the only person in the country who has an original Taspo tenor pan that I acquired more than 50 years ago from one of the Taspo players who went to Vietnam to entertain the soldiers. After the war, he was destitute, and I helped him to get back to London, and he gave me this tenor pan, which I played all over India for years. The point here is that unless the pan becomes part of the people's culture where we want to export it, it's an uphill task. They're not going to play soca and calypso and all of that. If the pan is identified with what they do, and that's what I did in some of the countries in China and in India and other countries I was posted to, play with people, excellent musicians in their own country. They immediately adopt the pan because it becomes part of their own. Let me make some other random points. When I was ambassador to Japan, the week I went to present my credentials in Japan, there was a massive steel band festival. All the trainees in Japan came to me and complained that there was absolutely no reference to Trinidad and Tobago. So I got the organizers to stick in Trinidad and Tobago in the major banners. The point here is, we cannot do anything about the spread of Steelpan. People will adopt it and take it and make it their own unless we use the opportunity to get into Japan, for example, and become part of the movement, influence the movement, influence what they do, and make sure that we stand out as the originators, as the rightful mecca of pan, as you said. Let me also say that many years ago, the government of Trinidad and Tobago decided to station pans at various major TNT embassies abroad. When I was posted to England, I discovered pans in the basement of the High Commission. We got the hammer, Rudolph, to come to London to examine the pans to see if they were good at all. He found about 5 pans that were good, the others were not good. The message here is that unless we station pan, bearing in mind the difficulties of transporting pan, if you get a gig abroad, you get an opportunity to travel within a limited number of days. You can't take that opportunity because it takes weeks for the pans or months for the pans to get to destination in places like China and other far-off places. We have to have pans stationed there. The government made efforts, they made promises over the years. I think when I played the pan in China, Panland brought me the pan, but I had to pay him out of my own money as ambassador to play the pan and keep it. Government has to do something about that. The other point is that if we export pans, you have to have tuners in the main centers where you're exporting the pan, because the pans get out of tune, less attractive, and you're not creating a wider market. I found that in China. I found 3 steel pans in China where the organizers exported from London and New York, second-hand pans, quickly went out of tune, and they lost the interest in the whole thing. We have to station pan tuners, players, or even an individual pan tuner and player out of major embassies where we hope to export pans, so that they can help the people who import the pans to tune the pans and keep them well tuned. There are quite some other ideas I'd like to share with you, but for now, I think we have to really focus some of this point to add to what you're already doing, so that we keep ahead. We make sure that we maintain our rightful place as the originators of pan by being in the forefront of wherever the pan goes. We have to go with it and be part of it. Thank you.
We want to thank the panel for their contribution in our segment entitled Pan, Sweet Pan.